Long before accountants filled skyscraper towers with spreadsheets, Britain created a different kind of financial watcher. These were silent observers who examined nations not through borders or armies, but through balance sheets. While other empires counted soldiers, Britain counted liabilities, deficits, reserves, and misreported inventories precisely. An empire of numbers formed quietly, ruled by people the world never realized were watching. Britain understood that books never lie, only people do, and books reveal their weakness eventually. Where diplomats inspected treaties and generals inspected maps, British auditors inspected the mathematics behind both. Every economy carried a heartbeat measured through ledgers, and Britain learned how to detect irregularities. To control nations, it realized, you must first control the people interpreting economic truth. These invisible accountants appeared everywhere across the empire, disguised as clerks, assistants, advisors, or inspectors. They requested documents politely, reviewed receipts quietly, and uncovered vulnerabilities no government wanted revealed publicly. Through them, Britain saw everything: trade patterns, hidden debts, tax failures, mismanaged reserves, and falsified accounts. They were not spies by definition, yet their information surpassed conventional intelligence in strategic value. Colonial officials welcomed them, unaware these audits shaped London's understanding of their internal fragilities. Every corrected error revealed a weakness. Every weakness became leverage for future negotiations and control. Numbers became political weapons, shaping policies more forcefully than commands issued from distant government offices. Britain didn't need armies when accountants uncovered flaws strong enough to dictate national behavior. Merchants across the empire feared British auditors more than local authorities regulating their trade operations. Auditors caught smuggling disguised as clerical error, fraud disguised as miscalculated shipments, corruption disguised routinely. Their reports traveled to London faster than complaints, forcing traders into obedience through mathematical scrutiny. Thus commerce aligned itself with Britain not through loyalty, but through fear of numerical exposure. Banks reluctantly opened their vaults, presenting statements to auditors who could sense inconsistencies instantly. They analyzed interest flows, foreign lending patterns, delayed repayments, and unusual transaction clusters with precision. Institutions realized transparency wasn't optional. It was demanded forcibly by the empire's analytical machinery. Through audit control, Britain gained early insight into financial storms before they reached catastrophic scale. Governments submitted budgets believing London simply needed confirmation of colonial economic performance annually, but Britain examined more than revenue. It examined potential rebellion indicators, tax rebellion behavior, and societal pressure. If the numbers reflected dissatisfaction, Britain intervened quietly through financial adjustments or new policy recommendations. The empire understood rebellion begins in ledgers long before it appears in streets or speeches. In trade hubs, invisible accountants track shipment weights, port fees, and commodity losses unexplainable on records. They connected discrepancies with corrupt officials, criminal groups, or foreign agents influencing trade routes. Ports that manipulated data learned Britain always discovered truth, no matter how deeply inaccuracies were buried. Information created control, and control created a hierarchy where Britain stood completely unchallenged financially. Foreign nations sought British auditors voluntarily, hoping their approval would boost credibility in international markets. A positive British assessment could stabilize currencies, attract investment, and reduce borrowing costs significantly. This dependence gave Britain influence without imposing authority, turning audits into instruments of global diplomacy. Approval replaced permission, and permission replaced sovereignty in subtle yet powerful transformations worldwide. Some leaders resented this influence, yet they couldn't decline British reviews without alarming foreign investors widely. Refusal signaled risk, and risk meant capital fleeing faster than governments could defend their economies. Thus even independent nations embraced British oversight willingly, masking dependency behind public displays of pride. They accepted the empire's observers because refusing meant economic suffocation, far more damaging than submission. The auditing system expanded as Britain established research bureaus studying taxation, expenditure, wages, and consumption. These bureaus converted data into forecasts predicting whether colonies could finance wars, revolts, or reform movements. London became the world's most informed capital, understanding economies better than their own governments. Numbers became a crystal ball, allowing Britain to foresee collapse or opportunity long before it occurred. Invisible accountants infiltrated trading companies whose operations spanned oceans and continents with immense strategic significance. They inspected shipments, cost breakdowns, employee lists, and routes that might hide illicit financial activity. Their findings influenced British decisions about tariffs, trade agreements, and diplomatic pressure methods. Knowledge turned into guidance, and guidance turned into invisible imperial steering of corporate behavior. Mining corporations submitting production data soon realized British auditors tracked output more accurately than they did. By comparing shipments leaving mines and metal entering ports, auditors exposed systematic underreporting immediately. These exposures helped Britain regulate extraction rates by adjusting financial terms quietly behind closed doors. Thus, Britain controlled resources indirectly, ensuring mines produced exactly what its global strategy required. Textile mills in India, shipping yards in Canada, and plantations in Africa all underwent similar scrutiny. Even minor bookkeeping errors triggered immediate audits, revealing layers of mismanagement previously unnoticed by local authorities. This consistent attention ensured colonial industries operated efficiently, profitably, and in line with British priorities. Production became predictable, and predictability strengthened the empire's economic backbone beyond political changes. Invisible accountants crafted sophisticated reporting formats that forced colonies to disclose information in unified systems. No matter the region, revenue and expenditure appeared in identical structures Britain could analyze effortlessly. This standardization wasn't administrative. It meant Britain could compare 50 economies simultaneously. Patterns emerged easily, helping London manipulate supply chains, taxation, and investment strategies with unmatched clarity. Wherever resistance grew, auditors reported unusual financial behavior, indicating disorder brewing secretly among communities. These irregularities often preceded uprisings, giving British officials time to adjust policies or strengthen defences. Thus, accountants prevented rebellions indirectly, interpreting spreadsheet anomalies as warnings of political discontent. Numbers became intelligence, and intelligence became a shield protecting imperial continuity. Foreign banks requested British auditors for credibility, believing empire-approved audits increased trust among investors. This relationship expanded Britain's authority into territories far outside its official jurisdiction. Even nations opposed to British dominance trusted its accountants more than their own institutions. Such paradoxical trust revealed Britain's greatest strength, credibility forged through relentless analytical accuracy. Insurance networks flourished because British auditors calculated risk profiles more accurately than global competitors. Their evaluation of ports, cargo, climate impact, and fraud probability outperformed local inspection standards completely. Thus, insurance premiums across continents were influenced by British assessments, not local risk conditions. In this way, Britain monetized knowledge, transforming analysis into revenue extracted globally. Invisible accountants even influenced military supply systems, ensuring imperial forces received steady provisioning everywhere. They evaluated logistics, administration costs, material accuracy, and fraudulent requisition patterns frequently hidden. Their discoveries shaped procurement reforms that reduced waste, corruption, and strategic vulnerability significantly. The empire fought with mathematics, ensuring efficiency strengthened its armies without increasing military budgets enormously. By the 20th century, auditors evolved into global investigators, reviewing corporations, governments, and financial systems internationally. Their reports shaped global lending decisions, infrastructure planning, and international economic policies. World leaders feared negative assessments because audits could trigger investor withdrawals instantly. Thus, Britain gained unprecedented indirect control, the power to destabilize or stabilize entire states quietly. Even after political empire faded, the auditing empire survived untouched, stronger and more international than before. It integrated into global institutions that adopted British accounting principles, methods, and reporting frameworks universally. Britain's way of measuring economies became the world's way of understanding economic truth. This was Britain's final victory, establishing rules of measurement that outlived colonial authority entirely. The invisible accountant shaped geopolitical outcomes through detailed, emotionless analysis, influencing power shifts globally. Nations believed decisions stemmed from internal evaluation. Unaware British frameworks guided their conclusions. Empires of land collapse, but empires of measurement endure because they shape how reality is understood. Britain mastered that principle, building an empire hidden inside ledgers rather than territories or armies. And as nations raced toward modernity, they carried British auditing structures into every institution unconsciously. Whether financial, corporate, governmental, or diplomatic, each system followed rules written in London. This invisible legacy became the empire's most influential creation, defining credibility for generations worldwide. Britain no longer ruled through force. It ruled through definitions of truth itself. As the 20th century advanced, nations believed independence meant rewriting their financial systems entirely anew. But their accountants still used British templates, their auditors applied British rules, and their governments trusted British revisions. Independence altered flags and borders, yet financial measurement remained carved by the empire's unseen architects. Thus Britain continued ruling quietly, not through force, but through interpretive frameworks shaping economic reality globally. These invisible accountants evolved into consultants whose recommendations could transform national budgets overnight effortlessly. Governments adopted policies crafted by analysts trained in London's precise, unforgiving accounting traditions. Every fiscal plan, tax reform, or debt negotiation reflected a logic informed by British methodology. Britain didn't order nations to comply. The numbers gently coerced them into following its system. Foreign ministries soon realized Britain's accountants knew more about their economies than local ministers themselves. Data flowed to London continuously through international banks, insurance companies, shipping offices, and multinational firms. Britain combined these fragments into a panoramic economic view no single nation could replicate independently. This perspective made Britain indispensable, granting soft power more influential than old imperial command structures. International creditors demanded audits based on British systems before approving loans to struggling or developing countries. These audits graded nations, ranking them by stability, transparency, and financial discipline according to British criteria. A poor rating meant higher interest, investor fear, and unstable currency conditions, rippling across entire populations. Thus, Britain didn't punish nations directly. Global markets did the enforcement automatically in its favour. Where economic crisis emerged, invisible accountants arrived earlier than diplomats, analysing collapse indicators methodically. They studied spending patterns, tax gaps, loan structures, and misreported obligations buried inside outdated fiscal systems. Their reports determined whether a nation received rescue packages, austerity requirements, or strict restructuring mandates. A signature from an accountant sometimes influenced political futures more aggressively than public elections themselves. Corporations seeking global expansion admitted financial statements for British-style evaluation before investors considered involvement. These statements followed accounting principles derived from London's historic frameworks refined over centuries progressively. Without adherence, corporations risked exclusion from international markets governed by British standards subconsciously. Thus, Britain controlled commerce indirectly, shaping corporate behaviour long after empire supposedly disappeared entirely. Invisible accountants developed forecasting models predicting economic crises with accuracy surpassing domestic government agencies. These models assessed currency volatility, commodity exposure, national debt cycles, and hidden vulnerabilities deeply embedded. Governments used these predictions to adjust budgets quietly, preventing collapses that could destabilize entire regions. Thus, Britain saved nations not through charity, but through preserving the system sustaining its global influence. World institutions adopted British auditing methods, encoding empire-born logic into the rules of global governance. When these institutions reviewed national accounts, they judged them using principles forged inside British history. Every assessment reinforced Britain's intellectual dominance, even when decisions were made by international committees. Empire dissolved politically yet survived structurally, embedded inside the grammar of numbers guiding civilization. British trained auditors spread across continents, bringing procedural discipline learned in London's strict financial firms. They introduced hierarchical systems organizing information, eliminating ambiguity, and strengthening forecasting capabilities. These systems mirrored the empire's own organizational philosophy, ensuring long-term alignment with British thinking. Knowledge became colonization, subtle, unspoken, and far more enduring than territorial rule ever achieved. Intelligence agencies partnered with financial auditors, blending economic insight with geopolitical strategy seamlessly. Invisible accountants identified laundering, corruption networks, and political funding channels hidden inside complex transactions. Their analytical precision helped Britain navigate global conflicts long before military involvement became necessary. The battlefield shifted from land to ledgers, where spreadsheets predicted danger more reliably than spies. Shipping corporations relied on British audits to certify logistical efficiency across international maritime routes. These certifications shaped global freight prices, port ratings, and trade insurance risk profiles calculated scientifically. Thus, Britain influenced trade costs globally, adjusting incentives and penalties through analytical evaluation alone. No navy was needed when mathematics controlled the direction of economic movement safely. Resource-rich nations depended on British auditors to determine the true valuation of mines and oil reserves. These valuations influenced foreign investment, political stability, and long-term national development strategies deeply. Britain's calculations therefore shaped the trajectory of entire industries across continents without explicit intervention. In valuation lay power, the authority to define worth and influence ambition at the source. Invisible accountants restructured budgets in post-war economies, determining how reconstruction funds should be deployed wisely. These decisions shaped public services, infrastructure planning, currency reforms, and sovereign debt rehabilitation comprehensively. Nations looked stable because their numbers looked stable, guided by Britain's precise recommendations. Order emerged through arithmetic, turning auditors into architects of recovery, silently directing national rebirth. Even superpowers adopted British-derived auditing frameworks, recognizing their accuracy surpassed local evaluation standards. Thus, Britain influenced global policy decisions, even in countries resistant to political alignment overtly. Numbers acted as ambassadors, crossing borders freely, carrying British logic into foreign ministries confidently. This ideological diffusion transformed the empire into an invisible institution, embedded inside global systems permanently. When multinational corporations faced legal disputes, courts preferred financial records prepared under British-style auditing rules. These rules provided clarity, consistency, and historical precedent unmatched by other systems globally. Judges trusted British frameworks because they produced reliable interpretations of complex financial realities. Thus, British accounting principles shaped international law, strengthening the empire's intellectual hegemony quietly. Invisible accountants shaped currency reforms, advising nations on stabilization measures during volatile financial periods. Their guidance determined whether currencies floated, pegged, or adopted hybrid arrangements, preserving internal resilience. Such decisions influenced economic identity for generations, revealing Britain's deep influence over national futures. Advisory power became destiny-shaping power, crafted through subtle yet transformative financial recommendations. Governments embraced British auditing because it protected them from internal corruption and external market suspicion. These audits served as shields, defending nations from accusations, sanctions, and investor distrust worldwide. Britain's auditing principles became a global safety net, granting protection to governments regardless of ideology. Thus, compliance wasn't obligation, it was survival, creating loyalty stronger than diplomatic alliances. Economic disasters exposed nations dependent on inaccurate or outdated internal accounting frameworks entirely. These nations sought British auditors urgently, begging for structural reform to stabilize collapsing financial foundations. Britain responded by rewriting frameworks, correcting decades of mismanagement, and restoring investor confidence quickly. Every rescue increased Britain's authority, proving its invisible accountants were essential architects of stability. Universities worldwide adopted British accounting textbooks, teaching students to measure economies using British-born logic. Generations of economists internalized empire-coded methodologies, spreading them across global institutions instinctively. Thus, Britain reprogrammed financial understanding across the world through education, not political compulsion. Influence multiplied as graduates applied these principles in ministries, corporations, and regulatory systems internationally. Invisible accountants also shaped modern transparency laws, pushing nations to adopt reporting frameworks reducing corruption. These laws strengthened global credibility and aligned countries more closely with British methodological ideals. Every reform reinforced the empire's intellectual blueprint, embedding it into 21st century governance structures. Britain didn't need control, it needed adoption, and the world adopted willingly. As digital technology replaced paper, British auditing models adapted to software systems used globally today. Every financial platform, from enterprise tools to governmental systems, encoded British measurement philosophy internally. Even algorithms calculating risk mirrored principles first drafted by Britain's historical accounting pioneers. The empire entered the digital age not through conquest, but through inherited structure, shaping modern code. Through all these transformations, invisible accountants remained Britain's most loyal and effective ambassadors outwardly. They represented order, trust, competence, and stability in a world often defined by unpredictability. Nations trusted them because they reduced chaos, translating complexity into manageable, comprehensible systems. This trust extended Britain's influence far beyond any territory the empire physically controlled historically. Thus, Britain built a dominion made not of land, but of interpretation, review, and analytical certainty. It shaped how nations understood themselves through balance sheets, budgets, and economic performance indicators. The empire faded politically, yet its financial measurement tools conquered the modern world quietly. Numbers replaced soldiers, standards replaced borders, and audits replaced conquest entirely. Britain's invisible accountants created a world where truth itself could be quantified, analyzed, and strategically applied. Their influence persists in every modern institution, relying on frameworks born inside imperial history. The empire didn't end, it simply changed form, embedding its power inside global financial architecture. And its most powerful agents remain unseen, living inside spreadsheets, systems, and the structures governing civilization. If this story changed how you see power behind numbers, remember, empires last longer when they hide inside systems. Subscribe for more untold histories shaping global finance, because the next audit may already be rewriting the world.